If there's one type of game I love, it's got to be platformers. Your Marios, your Sonics, your Crashes, your Spyros, your Banjos and or Kazooies. I'll play them all. So when I first heard about Penny's Big Breakaway back in 2023, I was instantly intrigued. This is the debut title by Evening Star Games, several of whom worked on Sonic Mania, which is one of my favorite games of all time. But this would not be a 2D game based on a well-known IP, but in fact an original 3D action platformer with tricks, collectibles, and dozens of stages to conquer. What I completed ended up being one of the most unique games I've ever played. It's also one of the strangest. The learning curve is kind of steep, and the difficulty can be high, but if you put in the time to learn and perfect your skills, you'll walk away with a deep appreciation for the lengths that an indie game can push the limits of an entire genre. Penny's Big Breakaway defies easy categorization and emerges wholly as its own thing. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another brand new episode of The Completionist, where we don't just beat the games, we complete them. Penny's Big Breakaway surprisingly dropped out of the blue last week, and I figured, since all of you are probably about to embark on that big Final Fantasy VII Rebirth journey like I am, I wanted to talk about what it's like to complete Penny's Big Breakaway to share why this game is so good.
Yes! All glory goes to the winner!
From the moment you start the game, Penny's Big Breakaway wastes no time. You are thrown right into the action. And that to me is both a good thing and a bad thing. This game is so unlike any other platformer I've played recently that I legitimately wasn't sure if I was having fun or not for several stages yet. Let me explain. What makes a good 3D platformer is obviously subjective to the player, but most can agree that there are a few important factors. Movement should feel purposeful with a strong sense of momentum. Level design is key, and the game must give the player a motivation to press forward, whether it's with a score system, by providing interesting collectibles or unlockables, and or creating a cool world to explore. The setup of Penny's is simple. Emperor Eddie is looking for the best performer he can find in all of the land. People have traveled from all over the world for the chance to audition just for him. But Penny, armed with a magical yo-yo, cuts the line and accidentally exposes and embarrasses the Emperor to his entire court. Penny is suddenly a wanted criminal, and the Emperor's penguin guard and his other allies will stop at nothing to capture Penny and put an end to her mischievous, accidental adventure. The game is divided up into 11 worlds with 1 to 4 stages and possibly a boss fight depending on the different act or world. Each area has different gameplay mechanics, meaning that you are constantly learning new techniques and mastering different power-ups. And you'll need to, because completing each level has multiple requirements. Every main level has 3 special coins to collect called showpieces that kind of look like a big hexagonal nut. These are usually hidden in out-of-the-way places that require you to think outside the box or be very good at platforming. Every level also has 3 denizen dilemmas, essentially mini side quests that involve ferrying an item from one part of the map to another, or maybe even collecting a handful of items before the time runs out. Through each level, time is ticking, but you can rack up a high score by performing yo-yo tricks and platforming feats. The score is super important as you unlock a special postcard in a scrapbook if you cross a certain point threshold in each and every stage. And at the end of every level, there is a platform with 3 stages to land on. If you land at the center one, you get the 3 mini games, which is the best way to rack the highest score. Stages are also littered with small coins, which are easy to collect. You can earn over 100 per level, which is pretty easy, and you can spend them if you want to on one-off bonus items that will carry over into future stages. Things like the Gusto Guard, which provides some temporary HP, or the Flippy Fish, which saves you from being captured by penguins at least one time. With that said, however, I never used a single coin on any of these power-ups because not only were they temporary, I didn't really find a need to do that. Also, there's an achievement for having 10,000 coins, and I did not want to mess that up. So just to make sure, I didn't spend a single coin in the game. To give you an idea, I completed the entire game as best as I could, and in the end, I ended up with about 9,800 coins. So I simply had to replay a stage twice, and boom, I had all 10,000 coins. I like collecting coins. I don't know how everyone feels generally about coins in 3D platformers, but when I see them, I grab them. Now I gotta say, taking a step back, I will never look at penguins the same way again after completing this game. Absolutely terrifying to see a mob of them stage to stage, smash through walls, chasing you down across a level, some of them rolling like a big ball or wheel until you can whip them away with a yo-yo or escape as far as you can. Now the special coins you earn can be spent to unlock the 15 unique Star Globe stages. These Star Globe stages are basically bonus levels where the game wants you to combo the whole time in one long go. It feels like a fun, unique twist on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater because the score thresholds for completing are crazy high for these stages. Not that they're crazy high and difficult, but the stages are so short. You have to plan your moves accordingly. Not to mention, the stages are difficult to platform through, so you have to get the best score and succeed through the stage. Beating stages, solving dilemmas, and collecting coins all contributes to an in-game completion percentage as well. Now, since I completed this game on the PS5, there are also 31 trophies to earn. I was worried about these at first, but once I saw the structure of the trophy list, my fears were immediately put to rest. Pretty much every world has at least 2 trophies tied to it. One for the inevitable boss fight or story beat, and the one related to a unique mechanic about that stage. Once I took a peek at the trophy list and the scrapbook to see what the high score demand I needed to hit was per stage, I was able to plan out and execute what I needed to do on every single level. And this is where the game starts to show its uniqueness. Execution is the name of the game, and it's quite the ramp up to get there. There are a lot of familiar 3D platforming elements at play here, but they are presented here in a way that I've truly never seen before. Even after fully completing the first act, I felt like I was having to learn and relearn basic moves at the start of every new level. Penny's Big Breakaway asks a lot of the player from a completionist perspective, but it doesn't ever feel unmanageable once you figure out how to get moving. It sounds like an exaggeration when I say that this game has movement options that feel completely unlike anything I've played before. And I gotta be honest, even after completing this game, I'm not sure that I love it. When it works, it really works. But it took me a lot of time to get up to speed here. And that's not a knock against Penny's Big Breakaway, but it's something to know beforehand if you're going to fully complete it. I felt like I was a completely different person by the time I was done completing the game, considering the skill required for some of the harder endgame tasks and levels. This is a 3D action platformer, but it is based around building and maintaining momentum as best you can. Makes sense coming from the Sonic Mania devs. Penny's all about using her yo-yo and magic string to fling herself up, down, and all around. You can use it to smack penguins or ride it like a big old wheel. The yo-yo can attach to rails like a zip line and slingshot Penny to great heights. It's awesome, but it's also a pain in the ass to learn how to use effectively. Penny's basic walking, running, and jumping isn't exactly as snappy as I would have wanted it to be. To have any hope of finishing a single level, much less completing the campaign and the bonus Star Globe stages, you will have to master all of the tools at your disposal. Every trick, every nuance, every weird little thing the yo-yo can do, and I got there. Eventually. There are 2 ways to flick out the yo-yo. You can use the right stick or the square button. I honestly never really got used to using the right stick outside of when you have to twirl it in a circle to loosen bolts or clear some penguins surrounding you. In fact, there are multiple buttons that do the same thing on the controller, and that messed with me for way longer than I cared to admit. Especially early on, I felt like this game was fighting me at every opportunity. There were a couple of decisions regarding controls that stood out to me as strange. A lot of buttons on the controller do the same thing, multiple ways to jump, throw the yo-yo, or even gravity drop down and ride the yo-yo. Inherently, there's nothing wrong with this approach by any means, but I would have loved more movement options or different button combinations to execute certain maneuvers specifically, but ultimately it would come down to hitting the same buttons in a certain rhythmic pattern. By the end, I understood how exactly to play the game, but it took time to learn, and even at the end, one of the hardest trophies or achievements in the game requires you to speedrun the final stage of 11-4 under 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And doing so will really show you how far you've come as a player. But the frustrations that I just described to you are right here front and center, given you have to haul ass the entire time. Another thing that feels a little at odds with itself is the exploration in this game. I wanted to explore every inch of the levels. Maybe it was the completionist in me, but I went out of my way to see every corner of the stage, and I felt like the game wanted me to rip through it as quick as possible. You will probably find yourself doing a couple playthroughs of each stage, once or twice to gather all the collectibles or score requirements, and then again after you've mastered the level layout just to really experience the stage. I was able to one-shot all of the collectibles in most stages by taking my time, but that usually meant a lower score bonus when I reached the end. So after determining where all the collectibles were and how to solve the NPC dilemmas, I would get to the end of that stage, and then I would do this exact trick routine that you are seeing unfold to you right now. It starts out with just holding R2, which makes Penny rev on the yo-yo like a bike until I build up 300 points. Then I let go, double jump, throw the yo-yo and hold it, and then hang on it so I could swing. Once you've swung back and forth and lost momentum, I would let go, and right when I would land, I would hold R2 again to repeat this process. Doing this exact combo for about 3 to 5 minutes ensured that I always got the highest score possible I needed in order to earn the scrapbook pieces. It was not until that later story mode worlds or Star Globe levels where I really had to replay stages multiple times. But that was because the show pieces or the tasks were well hidden, whether they were hidden behind a secret door or platform, or there was a baseball glove secret location that would take you to a little puzzle. Now there is a time attack mode, but it's not associated with any in-game achievements or trophies. You can post your time attack scores on a global leaderboard, but there aren't dev times to beat listed or anything like that. I think that's fine. Even if I'm used to speedrunning levels in a game like this, I'm okay with this. Let the speedrunners enjoy what they want to enjoy. Now, if you're trying to complete the game efficiently and unlock the scrapbook as you go along, definitely do what I suggested earlier and look up the scores you have to beat from stage to stage. This gives you a great sense of how well you're doing in a given level and whether it might be worth it to restart if you can't find the flow or do the combo that I recommended to you earlier. This is especially useful for the Star Globe stages where you basically have to nail combos for the entire run of the level if you want to have any hope of completing them. Once you find the flow and can execute what you want to do on the regular, Penny's Big Breakaway feels transportive. I was juggling gigantic combo streaks as I zipped through stages, never slowing down and never stopping. There are aspects of musicality or learning a complicated instrument in the mechanics where you have to feel out the rhythm for button presses and jump height and all of that stuff. The feeling I got when I figured out what the hell I was doing was very satisfying, but a lot of the mechanics drove me crazy. So much of this game feels so polished that I was surprised to find myself frustrated by controls that I feel like I should have had an aptitude for getting for right away. But that's when I had my big platforming epiphany, which is going to sound dumb to a lot of people out there. This is not a 3D Mario platformer. This is not a 3D Sonic platformer. This isn't Yooka-Laylee. It's not Banjo-Kazooie. It's not Jet Set Radio. It's not a Hat in Time. This is a game trying to do its own thing, and for that, it succeeds very well in. By attempting to be so unique and different, but not following the blueprint of its inspirations all the way through. Penny's Big Breakaway truly feels like its own adventure that hasn't been done before. Now, I feel like at this point, I don't need to praise T. Lopes anymore, as we all have seen him thrive so much since his Sonic Mania days. But once again, I gotta say it, T. Lopes brings such great energy and vibes to the soundtrack of Penny's. There's this level of understanding that the players are going to be hearing these tracks for quite some time, so he made them so jam-packed full of life and brightness that you start to fall in love with the level design itself more and more because of its atmospheric sound and music. Hats off once again to T. Lopes for just knocking it out of the park. Every single level is very well designed and the aesthetics are wonderful. There's your standard bright, beautiful city, but there's also a level themed around cooking, where you melt pads of butter in gigantic pans. There's this very slapstick, frantic energy on display that fits the whole circus performing thing to a whole other level. Now, there are a few boss fights in the game, and they vary in terms of difficulty. They're super smart and inventive, and each one asks the player to focus on something different. In one, you're basically racing across the ocean to board a submarine and fix a bunch of bolts, and in another, you basically reflect back energy balls to stun a guy and then knock those balls that are on the floor into pockets of a pool table. All these bosses are inventive and whimsical overall. I'd say the entire vibe is very much late 90s, early 2000s. An era where games of this type were still figuring themselves out. Like the heyday of the Dreamcast, where everything felt really distinct, even if it didn't feel super amazing to play. I'm torn because a game shouldn't be judged harshly just because it has a high difficulty curve. And I'd argue that Penny's is not that high to begin with. That's what most people love about platformers and why they always feel satisfying to master. But the friction of some of the mechanics felt strange to overcome for me. And I'm very glad at the end that I was able to figure it all out and feel like the master of Penny's Big Breakaway. like that every level has objectives within them and that completing every stage unlocks something. I wish the unlockables felt a little more rewarding and that there was something at the end of that rainbow, but I am glad there are rewards overall along the way. Earning all 31 trophies and achievements was not nearly as difficult as I thought it would be. I know I said a lot of words about how the difficulty curve was kind of steep, but even the skill related trophies I was able to stumble across before I really felt like I had mastered the movement were good. The Hundo Club trophy, for instance, where you have to hit over 100 of a combo string, sounds a lot more difficult than it was to achieve. And then I figured out how to do my endless combo and that achievement was easy. And another example is the Squeaky Clean trophy, where you have to complete a level without losing any gusto or not letting any of the penguins attach to you. I was able to do this on one of the Tideswell stages without even touching the water. So I really knocked out 2 achievements at the same time. I talked about perfecting each level as I went along, and I think that's the way I'd recommend completing this game. Since every world is so distinct and has different mechanics to learn and incorporate into your moveset, it's easier to master each level and move on than to have to refamiliarize yourself with stuff you only learn once or twice throughout the entire game. The Star Globes element of the completion process took me the longest to do. You basically have to complete the entire rest of the game to have access to all 15 Star Globe stages. Each one costs a different amount of special coins, and you need 102 coins total to gain access to every stage. These challenge stages are really tough with point thresholds that, in my opinion, are a little too high. But if you're really stressed about unlocking the scrapbook pages, you can always do my combo farming point at the end of the stage or the beginning of the stage. There's usually a little room for cheese, even if the game is definitely pointing you towards trying to be a combo fiend and just doing it all in one super flashy speed run. But I say complete the game the way that you want to complete it. I had a couple of small bugs on my completion journey. Sometimes the music would cut out during the final busking minigame of a given stage. The one bug I thought was going to make this game incompletable for me was somehow in the final Star Globe stage, no matter how many times I finished the level, the entire game would just crash on me. However, after turning off the PS5 completely hard boot style and turning it back on, that seemed to fix the issue that I had. So I can't hold it against the entire package. This is an indie dev team, which means they're constantly working to get this game as polished as they can for all of you at home. And any and all bugs that I found, I reported directly to the team myself to help them. Luckily, in my experience, these bugs were simply a handful. Nothing that will break the game or make you feel bad. Every level you master unlocks one piece of the artwork in the scrapbook for 49 art pieces total. I always love concept art or unlockables of this nature, so I thought it was pretty fitting. That is the big thing you're working towards in this game, fully unlocking the art book, and I was glad to see the whole thing there. However, there is no real bonus for getting 100% completion on your save file, which, as y'all know on this side of the woods, that's a bummer. The biggest pain anyone will experience when it comes to completing Penny's Big Breakaway will hands down be beating the final stage under 4 minutes and 30 seconds. It took me about 2.5 hours to completely perfect this stage, and even at that, I definitely had that 4 minutes and 32 seconds run, followed by a 4 minutes and 30 seconds and a half run. Eventually, I clocked it in at 4 minutes and 22 seconds, and man, did it feel so good to achieve it. Hard challenges can be fun as long as they don't kill you, which, I mean, I'm not dead, but damn, my thumbs are really blistered right now. I completed all 11 worlds in the story mode and the 15 Star Globe stages step by step in order in just around 22 hours casually. Casually meaning to me that because this game was so new, I took my time with it to find all the objectives or secrets without looking anything up. I'd say I was charmed for about 95% of my playtime here. The production values of Evening Star go really above and beyond, and I cannot wait to see how this indie studio keeps pushing itself. For me, I think Penny's Big Breakaway comes down to this. It's a fun time once you get going and figure out all of its intricacies, but I wish it offered a little bit more to those who want to take their time to master every single stage. It's amazing to see the originality at work, and I'm super impressed with all that Evening Star has accomplished here. So, with that in mind, guys, I give this game my completionist rating of Finish It. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.